Ladies, gentlemen, and friends beyond the binary, welcome to Step Back Tonight. I am a very underprepared Tristan Johnson tonight. Hello. I got distracted many times in like the minutes before this stream went up. Hi. Hello. For anybody who's new here, my name is Tristan Johnson. I'm the host of the YouTube channel Step Back History. And I guess I should say the host of the YouTube channels Step Back History and Tristan Won't Shut Up. And I stream 3 times a week. I stream on Mondays from 12 to 2 Eastern Time, where I do the Monday Discourse. It's a show where we talk about stuff going on in the Twitter zeitgeist and stuff with Mia Mulder. It's really fun. Then we do Tuesday nights, which is what you're watching right now, from 7 to 10, is Step Back Tonight, a sort of chill night, evening program where we answer some questions, talk about, stuff. And then at some point, we watch or we play some Jackbox games, hopefully, if we're not too busy. And then on Fridays from 2 to 5, I do a show called The Reactor, which I am not doing this week because a new Step Back video should be coming out that day, so I don't want to, mess up the traffic. So, I go by he, him pronouns. My work can be found at stepbackhistory.com or at TristanPJ on Twitter. If you are on Twitch right now and you are a member of Amazon Prime because I said The Expanse last time. Because you have a subscribe and save for a 12-pack of sriracha sauce every month, then you get one free Amazon Twitch Prime subscription, which if you don't use goes to Jeff Bezos and makes him even richer. But if you do use it, that money goes to an independent creator who needs it for rent and stuff. And if you want to do that, I really suggest you do. Any independent Twitch creator I recommend. But if you choose Step Back History, I'll be very grateful. You'll help feed my cats and pay my rent, which, is a lot. And yeah, my latest video that came out is on a simulation of a bunch of scenarios of the 2020 election, which was pretty grim. And my next video, I actually have 2 videos currently in production this week. I actually filmed. You can actually see my tripod. I still have my tripod up. Hey, Deputy Gandalf, thank you for subscribing.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you very much. I will try my best. Deputy Gandalf, you have been subscribed for so long. 6 months. It's so good. You're the real hero. Yeah, so I was filming today. My next video, I filmed 2 videos today, back to back. So I spent like 2.5 hours straight already talking. So time to do another 3. My next videos are going to be on one's on Paradox games and these sort of my beloved Paradox games and the sort of problematic stuff that's baked into its code. And my other video is on... What is my other video on? It's on the assassination of William McKinley. Let me know if, there's anything wrong with the sound, because I have a fan going because it's a bit warm. And... I turned down the gain on my microphone to try and get around it, but that might mean I'll be too quiet. So let me know if there's a problem. So yeah. All right, I think that's all the things. That's all the work that I needed to cover. Now we can get into the show. Whoa. All right, let's see what we got going on in the chat. Why do you believe in a stupid ideology? Well, Max, that's no way to make friends. I imagine you're not even here anymore. You probably just came in to say your piece and then leave. But yeah. Let me move my microphone a little bit. I want to get myself a little bit more space on this side so that I'm not covered up. Okay. Howdy from the land down under. I'm gonna have a Vegemite sandwich. Oh my god, no. I can't even joke about that. There was a time when I was young that I was actually going to, I was thinking about moving to, where was I planning on moving? God damn it. Melbourne. I was planning on moving to Melbourne. And I did not. I was in audio engineering school, and I wanted to get away from home and do some sort of job that involved, you know, go somewhere far away. And I heard that Melbourne had a decent music scene, so I thought that might have been a cool place to go. But alas, it was not in the cards because I dropped out of school and then had to go to new school, and none of that really required me to go to Melbourne, so didn't happen. But one of the things I did when I was like thinking about it was that somebody told me that I had to get adapted to the flavor of Vegemite if I wanted to move there. And I got my hands on some, and it tastes like garbage, like actual garbage. So, dodged a bullet there. Have you ever noticed that socialists love to complain that liberals love to talk about injustices, yet they don't do anything about it? All while those same socialists are busy watching their favorite streamers and going on Twitter wars. I feel like you're attacking me personally. I don't know what to say to that. Liberals love to complain about injustices too, and then they love to actively work to make those same injustices worse. So, which slacktivist do you like more? No, this is the wrong stream. Can we watch this clip of Noam Chomsky responding to a Harper's letter backlash? It's only 3 minutes. And worry it won't be relevant by the time you do a proper reactor stream. See, the thing is, like, my first thought is, like, no, because it's going to result in 1,000 other people sending me links saying, react to this now, react to this now. And I really don't want to encourage that behavior. Is this response a good response? Is it, like, worth, like, listening to? Like, is it fun? You know, I might as well give it a look. I do love Noam Chomsky. And I do like not talking because my throat is destroyed, so let's see where this goes. Okay, 3 minutes, 40 seconds. Sensing. I just want to dissuade 255 based entitlement. OMG. Oh, wait. Let me just check. I'm just worried that socialist movements will be washed down by the consumption of media. For example, I get annoyed when all I hear is drama from Bad Empanada and Vosh. Oh. I mean, Bad Empanada talks about subjects. Vosh, like, just doesn't comprehend reading, doesn't have reading comprehension, but is very convinced that he is a brain genius. But, anyways, let's do this thing. Let's get this video thing out of the way. History tag, interesting. Yeah, I am the host of Step Back History, and I tend to talk a lot about history, so that's what I do. But today we're talking about Noam Chomsky, who, you know, is like one of, like, I would say Noam Chomsky is the guy who made me an anarchist, so I have a mad deep respect for Chomsky. And when I found out that he signed the Harper's letter, I was like, either he wasn't fully made aware of what was going on, or he doesn't quite get what's the deal is. And I'm glad that there are some sort of responses. What are you voting at? Who are you voting for in November? I am not voting in November. Or I might be, but there's very low chance. I imagine there's a very low chance I'll be voting in November. Hey, AngryUp90, thank you for following. There might be an election in November because now that the Conservatives have a leader, they have no reason to, and they have a big war chest. Now they might have a reason to actually call for an election, which they might do this fall. And because, yeah, we'll see what happens. Anyways, let's take a look at this video.
Professor Chomsky, before we wrap up, you were part of this letter.
God damn.
That
Chomsky's not looking hot anymore. That's unfortunate. I mean, the guy's like 90 years old, so like cut him a break. But I really one of the things I really wanted to do was see Chomsky to see Chomsky speak once before he died, and that's looking less and less likely.
was addressing free speech, and it was, I think, interpreted in the public as a letter fighting back against what is now called cancel culture. And I'm curious because I know you've had to answer this question a lot, but cancel culture or the attack against folks for transgressions, past transgressions, apologized transgressions, or nothing at all, just plain old smears. It seems to have become a weapon of the powerful. I guess it's always been, but we're seeing it especially in this election. Alex Moore's campaign in Massachusetts right now against Representative Neal, and we see it with Shahid Buttar against Nancy Pelosi. There are many other races where they're using cancel culture, quote, to break apart campaigns, the momentum that they're gaining. Is this new?
What's happened is that segments of the left have taken up the standard procedures of the mainstream establishment, which are never discussed because they're just what you do to the left, you repress it. But segments of the left have picked it up. It's wrong in principle. It's tactically ridiculous. It's a gift to the right wing. If somebody comes...
Chomsky doesn't teach. He's been emeritus for years.
...to campus who you don't like, say Charles Murray, and you break up his meeting, that's a gift to him and to the right wing. Right. They love it. They can then portray themselves as the good guys who are standing up for freedom of speech against these radical thugs who want to destroy everything. So if you want to commit suicide, it's a perfect tactic. What you should do if somebody comes to campus who you don't like is organize a meeting in which you discuss, you bring people together, expose who it is, what the background is, what we should do about it. That drives them off campus in embarrassment because it's kind of like reputational risk. Right. That's the way you do it, and it's an educational achievement. Now, it's a lot easier to go into a meeting and scream than to take a constructive educational approach like a radical activist would. But just because it's easy doesn't mean it's right. It's kind of like saying, I'm against the establishment, so I'll break a window on Main Street. That's which happens, Yeah. To the weather underground, we're seeing some of it now. Gift to the right wing. That's basically what the letter was about. Actually, it was kind of amazing that there was any reaction at all to the letter, because if you read it, it's so mild.
Yeah.
There's almost nothing. It should have just been a slight tap on the wrist. Nobody should have noticed it. The reaction shows that there really is a problem.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly it. It really pushed people from all sides, whatever, the far right, the centrists, even the left, and it was. Yeah, I think that's exactly it. It shows that there's a real problem.
All right. let's talk about this a little bit, because I don't like I have two minds, which is one, what Noam Chomsky said about, like, organizing and doing activism against these, like, far right speakers coming to university campuses specifically is I agree with what he said. If it was true, which, like, I don't know what Chomsky's doing here, in the sense of, like, because, like, this is, like, I don't think he realizes how this cancel, oh, okay. There's like a lack of, like, a material aspect to this in a weird way, which is odd, because Chomsky should know about this shit. Like, universities will not, in, like, a vacuum, bring these speakers. They bring them, they pay for their travel, they pay for their hotels, they treat them to a nice supper beforehand, and all of this is done with money that comes from the university students. They vote, it's like how riots are the voice of the unheard. These kinds of, like, blockading and cancellations are more a good sign. Hey, Vagadam, thank you for following. They're more of a sign of the undemocratic nature of universities. Because, like, if a university was truly democratic, a discredited, like, race theorist like Charles Murray would never be invited to a university, because his ideas are out of touch with reality, and they're actively damaging. Another thing that Noam Chomsky seems to be not getting, which is odd, I'm genuinely surprised, is that people, like, that free speech is never that simple. Like, there's one thing to having, like when you have absolute free speech, i.e., you are allowing anybody to come and say whatever they want. What you're doing, more or less, is amplifying the voices of those who already have power and disincentivizing people who don't have power. Unless you're doing, like, active work to promote marginalized voices, having absolute free speech is going to promote an environment where those who are marginalized are not welcome. They're not allowed. Their voices are taken out. And so very often, like, having that kind of, like, absolutist tone of free speech results in typically the views and ideas that the most well-paid, the people who can afford to fly somebody out and put them in a hotel and pay for their nice dinner, they are, like, what they're doing is they're saying that the people who can afford the best speakers, those are the ones who get to come out. Those are the ones whose voices count. And to just, like, sure, I don't think there's anybody that I know who is, like, against free speech, that, like, thinks that even things that are, even opinions that you disagree with should be allowed to be said. I don't think there's anybody who disagrees with that. What people disagree with is, like, this person who actively denies the humanity of other humans, being paid to come to a university on their dollar, and then coming and spreading hatred, while, like, for example, socialist speakers never get invited to universities. That never happens. It's all, like a lot of the times when these, like, right-wing speakers come, it's because some extremely well-funded right-wing think tank is funding some, like, super right-wing student club on campus, or the university administration has, like, a speaker series, and they got to choose them all in their own rooms, no votes or anything like that. And like all of that shit together is annoying. It's annoying. We only like the yeah, and so that's my take, is that there seems to be no other way to try and affect the kinds of ideas the university decides to pay to have amplified than to shut down when they try to pay to amplify the speech of people who are spreading hate. And even then, that doesn't always work. I read a book on this, and one of the things that none of these cases that were highly publicized were ever done without serious consideration. Like they did so without all other when all other options sort of were undone, were unavailable, or when the speaker was like notoriously bad. But yeah. It's annoying. Because in a moment when we should be talking about, material conditions and about, amplifying marginalized voices, instead, people are just getting mad that, now that we're having, fascists come and speak on university campuses, that we need to protect them. And it's weird. It's weird how, if you look at, the history of, especially in America, of, free speech legislation, that, that free speech argument always seems to come up to defend the far right and for racists and bigots. But, we never talk about free speech in the context of protecting socialists, protecting anarchists, being an anarchist is flat out illegal in America. But, that's not a thing. That's not a thing we talk about that's not a free speech thing that we ever worry about. Right now, in America, you can, if you want to immigrate to the United States, you have to declare that you are not a member of a communist party, and you have to declare that you're not an anarchist, or else you cannot become a U.S. citizen. And if you're a permanent resident and found to be an anarchist or a communist, you can be deported for that. How is that not a free speech issue? Why is that? Why are we always we need to protect the right of Ben Shapiro's half-baked reactionary ideas, but we can't talk about, hey, for example, why can't we talk about the fact that an entire department at my university got shut down for having a speaker who talked about billionaires in a bad light? The ideals of free speech are great. Sure. Why not? The problem is that universities and in general, the world is not an even playing field. And in the marketplace of ideas, it's not the best ideas that win. It's the ideas that are the most funded or the most convenient to those who have power. I don't know. As you can see, my energy levels are very low because I probably did the most energy intensive part of video editing or of making a video today. And I did it twice. So I'm ugh. Why didn't the progressive conservatives pick a hardcore authoritarian to lead them? I feel like a right-wing party not picking a fascist to lead them is a novelty these days. They didn't. The progressive conservative, are you you talking about Doug Ford? Because there is no progressive conservative party at the federal level. It merged with the Canadian Alliance in 2003 and just became the Conservative Party. If you're talking about that with O'Toole, what I'm finding out is that what I read about O'Toole being moderate is not true. But I will say that the Canadian conservatives tend to pride themselves on not being, or at least a certain segment try to pride themselves on not being bigots and not being socially conservative and being only focused on hating poor people. But I don't know too much about Aaron O'Toole, to be honest, right now. I'm going to have to do some research. But from what I know is he still has people he doesn't like. And he's still going to be a right-wing leader, and very disturbing. Maybe not as right-wing as Stephen Harper, but still, it's not great. But yeah, it's like a weird freak of Canadian political culture. Hope you're getting used to your new home. Good luck with your next video. Thank you. I am getting used to my new home. I like the big space, and I miss my friends, but if I lived in Toronto, I wouldn't be seeing them anyway. Fascists eject modernity and Enlightenment, instead focus on internalized, passive, medieval or pre-medieval society ruled by idealized national hero figures. Is it still fascism if the idealized past was actually in the early modern/Enlightenment period, and the idealized national hero figures were in reality Enlightenment thinkers? Basically, I'm asking if American fascism screws with Umberto Eco's definition a little bit because they have no ancient past to focus on. You're not wrong, although, you think about it, the real fascists in America, the people that they, you think about, Richard's, a famous fan of Joe Biden, Richard Spencer, their thing that they appeal to is, the Western canon, Greco-Roman, Germanic stuff. So, in some ways, the self-aware fascists in America do still appeal to the same sort of national, false history of national heroes of a white race that existed that had nothing to do with each other thousands of years ago. So that kind of still happens, and that still fits the Umberto Eco situation. But I mean, you end up with people like Sargon of Akkad who have sort of made a weird form of hyper-rational fascism that's that kind of while not giving much credence to their, well, first of all, the Enlightenment figures weren't, I think that one of the things that we're learning is that those early modern Enlightenment thinkers were basically still white supremacists and racists, and they just glom onto that. So I think it says more about how the Enlightenment wasn't actually all that profound, which is something that Umberto Eco in his time probably that wasn't a super mainstream opinion back then. So maybe that's a part that hey Kalpsatoma, thank you for following. Welcome to the Orc Gang. So that's where I would go with that, is that there's been changing face of the, first of all, it's not as true as you think it is, but also that there has been a change in the perception of Enlightenment thinkers, where they weren't nearly as hyper rational as people think they were. And also, the mythical past, appealing to classical liberalism, which was the kind of Gilded Age era ideologies and stuff. I don't know. Whew, lots of questions tonight. I binged the entire It Could Happen Here, and I'm wondering what the impact of a second civil war would have on the rest of the world, like China, Europe, the Middle East, and the Americas. Food crisis, for one. Two, it would be interesting if the U.S. fundamentally fails as a state. A couple things might happen, which is, one, I don't know what the U.S. military bases across the world would end up doing. I don't know what would happen if America didn't have the resources to fund their military bases. They might be abandoned. They might be taken over by by the countries, their host countries, or they might be just taken down, or the American government in a crisis might retract their military presence in other countries. An anonymous cheered one. Thank you. Much appreciated. Another thing I could see happening is that a lot of the world's social movements would not be, manipulated by the CIA, which might result in some more, not only some more socialist projects possibly being successful, but the other thing would be that countries that have geopolitical ambitions might become more assertive. China and Russia might be more willing to, assert themselves and project power. And former American allies that sort of relied on the United States as their lifeline against another superpower might find themselves, might have their sovereignty threatened, or might have, their position in the world. Like, for example, a lot of the reasons why South Korea and Japan have close alliances with the United States is because of the threat of China. If Japan and South Korea found themselves without a United States projecting power, they would have a hard time figuring out what their geopolitical role in the world would be, because be much easier for China to just say, hey, Japan, you're part of China now. And nobody could really, do much to stop it. So there's a lot of countries that have sort of their geopolitical stability is based on having a close relationship with the United States that would be threatened. And probably the European Union would try to step up more in global leadership situations. I imagine Canada here would probably try to have a closer relationship with Europe, but also Canada would be reeling from the fact that we'd probably end up having an American refugee crisis, which would strain our resources quite a bit. How hyped are you for CK3? What are your hopes for it, and what are your fears that could go wrong with it? And will you stream it when it does come out? So it comes out in a week, and I'm very tempted to make my next Step Back Tonight a stream of Crusader Kings 3. I'm not going to commit to that, but it's looking pretty damn sure, because I do want to play it a lot next week. I'm pretty excited for it. I think it looks really good. My hopes for it are that it'll be fun, that it'll be interesting, that'll be cool, and that Crusader Kings 2 was such a massive hit that Crusader Kings 3 will be really good at teaching a lot of people about European history. One thing that I'm nervous about a little bit, that I hope will be part of the game that'll be a fix, because I'm thinking that there's something that might be a fix from Crusader Kings 2 that I didn't like, that they're doing in Crusader Kings 3, and if they fix it, it'll make me a lot happier about the role that Crusader Kings 2 plays in our media culture. But if it doesn't, I'll be really upset. Which is that in a lot of grand strategy games, especially Paradox games, the optimal strategy essentially boils down to ethnic cleansing. In all the games except for Stellaris, having ethnic groups that are not part of the dominant ethnic group is treated like it's a weakness, and usually a source of instability rather than a source of rather than something a little bit more complicated. And in many ways, Crusader Kings 2 is one of the favorite games of the alt-right, and one of the reasons is because it portrays Islam and Christianity as fundamentally incompatible with each other and fundamentally in conflict. And in those games, you do learn as an optimal strategy that the best way to fix things, or to make the best way to run a country, is to have a highly centralized set of vassals who are all part of your culture, and to have them eventually convert and culturally convert all of the provinces that they rule over. While Crusader Kings 3, with some parts of stability and things like that, are starting to show that it could be the fact that that you might end up with more incentives towards having a more multicultural, multi-religious, set of vassals in order to maintain a more cohesive empire. And that would be good, because I would love to see if they could have more situations in which you have, for example, Al-Andalus, where you have these regions that are a really healthy mix of Christians and Muslims and Jews all living together, and Muslim leadership, but a lot of religious tolerance that results in this huge flourishing of the sciences and the and arts and stuff like that. And I would love if they will model that better, because in Crusader Kings, it's more like, oh, if you're a Christian, you rule over Christians. And if you're a Christian who rules over Muslims, the region is inherently unstable until you can make them Christians, which is an unfact and sort of portrays the history of the Iberian Peninsula through the guise of the way that extremely Islamophobic people today would portray them. And that, like, you know, like kind of like Castilian propaganda, and really doesn't give a good portrayal of like what the Taifa kingdoms in Al-Andalus were actually like. So that's like one part of Crusader Kings that I hope is done a lot better, because I hope that one of the things that we can see or that we can do in Crusader Kings is to, like, because the centerpiece of it is the Crusades, and one of the things I'm hoping is that it's possible to show the many, many, many situations that the Crusades created where Christians and Muslims and Jews had to work with each other and coexist and not tear each other apart and not see themselves as fundamentally in conflict with each other. And I hope, it seems like there's some stuff that's going on in the mechanics of Crusader Kings where, like, stability and stuff like that are going to be affected if you have like a Christian ruling over Muslims or something like that, that it's like it's not going to be like, it'll cause some instability. But if you have, like, so which means that, like, you might be more incentivized to have a Muslim duke or a Muslim count if you're a king, that if you're like a Christian king, than in other situations, which I think would be preferable. Just a little preview of the Tristan Won't Shut Up video coming out. The other thing that also, the fear of what could go wrong, that I always fear when Paradox games come out, is that the game is going to be very easily broken soon in, and it's not going to be until they're like 2 or 3 expansions deep that they figure out that there's not like one lowest order optimal strategy that just like breaks the game. And you just like kind of like how North Korea mode basically broke Crusader Kings 2 for like a long time. Have you seen the Batman trailer, and what did you think? I haven't. I haven't seen the trailer for Batman, or the Batman, or whatever it's called. I heard the Riddler's in it, and I've seen some pictures, but I haven't seen the trailer yet. What Mia was describing yesterday, people who have chronic illnesses and refuse to vote for Biden or Trump because neither of them are offering Medicare for all. I know you're probably not inclined to criticize someone in that situation, but is it wrong to be like, well, I'm fucked either way, so I won't vote? I don't think so. Like, I don't know, like, you, like, this sort of, like, way that elections are running right now, where like I don't see any reason why somebody who has like a chronic condition sees Joe Biden actively telling you to eat shit while they like cuddle up to the right wing. Like, I don't see any reason for you to vote for them just because Donald Trump will be slightly worse for other people. Like, it's like you have to vote for something. And like Joe Biden is actively betraying any semblance of progressiveness in the Democratic Party. And I don't know, like, Mia comes from a country that has proportional representation. And so in that situation, it makes sense. Maybe it makes less sense in an electoral college, but I am certainly not going to stand here and say that somebody who has to pay 25% of their income for insulin that they need, and they're like barely scraping to get by and they have to ration it. I'm not going to tell that person that you're a bad person because you refuse to vote for Joe Biden because he let you out to dry for the medicine you need. Like, I'm in no place to tell that to somebody. First week of college, any tips? Wear a mask. Stay indoors. If you are, all right, that's my COVID tips is that, like, you should not be in university right now. Those universities should be closed. So you're going to have to use an excess of caution because your government is not. My non-COVID advice for university is that go into university knowing where you want, or having at least a little bit of an idea of where you want to go afterwards, because that will affect a lot of how you approach university. If you want to go to grad school, if you want to like get a master's or a PhD, then you need to be very much more concerned about your grades. If you like, and you have to do an honors program. So if you want to, so I would say, become a student of your own productivity in either case, and do, don't fuck around with your work. University is slightly harder than high school, but treat it like it's a job, because it is. And if you want to go to grad school, you need to have some pretty high grades, because grad school can be very competitive. And if you're American, getting a scholarship so that you don't have to pay tons of money to go to grad school is pretty important. If you're not planning on going to grad school, then I would suggest that you remember that the first letter in degree is D, and that really, like, not that you should be getting D's, but just remember that your grades aren't super duper important. All you really need is the degree, if that's all you want. And you've been conditioned since you were young to always get high grades so that you can go to the next school. If you plan on just getting a degree, then this is your last. Hey, Angry Ape 90, thank you for subscribing. Thank you. Putting money in my cat feeding fund. If you're planning on going to university for a degree, and you have no plans for afterwards, just keep in mind, all you need to get is that degree, and think about that degree. And don't overexert yourself, and instead use this time to make a lot of the weak connections that are going to be helping you in your future career. Because I've learned more about the world and about other people and about how to perform in like work and in social situations by being part of student politics, by being part of clubs, by being part of societies, and just by having an active social life than I did by like my university courses. And if you can do it, like depending on like if you do enough work that you're in no danger of failing. Like, don't get D's because you're almost like, because then you're like riding the line. You don't want to fail any classes. But keep in mind that you should keep the social aspect and being involved in things a priority. And if you find yourself unable to keep up with your life because you're trying to get A's, just chill out, because in many ways, if you get A pluses in all your classes and you had no social life in university, 20 years from now, you're not going to remember how well you did in, grade 11 or like, what's it called? Like biology 201. You're going to remember the friends you made and the work that you did, like in activism and in student politics and stuff like that. And those kinds of friends that you make are going to, like, there's this whole thing now about the rise of, like, now getting jobs is far less about sending out applications and resumes and more about having connections, these kind of like weak connections with people. And so building a strong network with the time that you're in university is pretty important. And if you want to go to work right after you get a degree, it's pretty key to not only build a network of people, but to have to spend your time meeting new people and socializing and like learning how to get along with people from different walks of life and broaden your experiences and stuff like that, and explore who you are and what you're into. Like, try new things and all that kind of stuff. That's like the best part of university. And focusing, like being too laser focused on getting super high grades will hurt that. And so I always suggest that you get involved and meet new people and maintain like maintain relationships with people from different walks of life. Like, when I started undergrad, I won't lie, I had views that were like borderline Islamophobic, if not like blatantly Islamophobic, and it was because it was me becoming friends with a Muslim student and actually talking with people from different backgrounds like that actually turned me around and realized what I was doing and what kind of propaganda I had been ingesting. And in a lot of ways, you become a richer person by maintaining relationships with more diverse people. And so, by the end of my university career, I was a member of the Gender Equity Center, and I was a member of the Pride Alliance, and I was, I was pretty good friends with the Muslim Students Association, and that kind of stuff, I think, made me in a better position to not only in the workplace, but like a better person overall. Hopefully that rambling went somewhere. Yeah. Do you think there will ever be a fascist versus socialist civil war in the U.S.? It's starting to look like that more likely. No. Given the political culture of the United States, it seems that the almost non-existent World War II era propaganda against fascism is disappearing way faster than Cold War era propaganda against the left. And so if there is a fascist versus socialist civil war, I have much more faith in America of there being more fascists than socialists. I hope I'm wrong, but that's sort of a thing. In the World War series, the Lizards determined that the Germans are the most advanced nation on Earth. And the first time humans ever destroy a Lizard landing ship, it's the Germans using Schwer Gustav railway gun, i.e. one of the super weapons the Nazis wasted money on. Is that problematic? I don't know about problematic. I mean, I think that sounds like a thing that it feels a little bit like Harry Turtledove wanting to show off his knowledge of the special weapons program that the Nazis did. So for anyone who doesn't know, during the end of World War II, the German army started getting very desperate for inventing some sort of technology that could turn the war around. One example, probably the thing that inspired this, was that World War I, a lot of technology was developed to try and figure a way to break the lines of the trenches. So things like what's it called? Things like gas warfare, for example, were developed as a way to try and break the lines of the trenches. The big one, and the one that's probably most responsible for really breaking the sort of trench-based paradigm of World War II, was the tank. And the Germans, I think, were trying to develop something like that to kind of turn the war around, because they were on the back foot by 1944, I think. On top of that, the Kriegsmarine, the German Navy, was pretty much done for late in the war as well. And they had a whole lot of surplus equipment they made for ships and stuff like that they needed to use. Like, they had these big battleship-sized motors and stuff like that they were like, oh, what can we do some stuff with? So the Special Weapons Department decided to try and invent weapons to get around, to either use all of this excess supplies in something else, or to try and invent something that would turn the war around. And yeah, some of them were like taking a battleship turret and mounting it on a rail car, so that you could have so you could fire naval shells from the back from a train. And other ideas were things like they were planning this hyper gun that could shoot shells across the English Channel. I think they actually made that one. Other ones were the Mouse, which was this tank that used a battleship motor. So it was like this, like almost like I want to say like almost 100-yard long tank. It was basically like a battleship on land, and that was sort of one of their concept. And a lot of them, like these are like I don't think very few of them even made it to the prototype phase. They were mostly like just like wacky concepts, but like in retrospect, they were terrible plans. But because they're kind of like dramatic and they're like crazy Nazi super weapons, a lot of people got really into studying them after World War II because it's like, for World War II nerds, this kind of shit's super fun. And I imagine Harry Turtledove, since, he apparently just fantasizes about Nazis winning World War II, he probably wrote a whole thing. He probably researched this, and he wanted to show it off in order to take out the aliens. I mean, I think it just shows that maybe Harry Turtledove doesn't know too much about military technology, but who knows? Wearing your step back shirt, Matt. Congrats. Repping the brand. I had this plan to buy like 8 more of them so that I could, so that I could wear one every day. If you think Canadian summers suck, Melbourne summers are worse. Yeah. Something makes me think that the heat in Australia would probably kill me. What are your thoughts on libertarian leftism? I mean, I'm kind of a libertarian leftist. Depends on what your definition of libertarian is. Like, there's some people who are like, it seems that a lot of people are like, I'm a libertarian leftist, which is just like, I'm an anarchist who still believes in the state for some reason. Which, like, okay, that would basically put you in, like, what, minarchist or whatever? Because, like, anybody on the libertarian left, they're fine. I like them. We're in the same quadrant of the memes. And I don't really know of any like I don't really have too much affection for authoritarian leftists, and if you were like a leftist who wanted to have a dictatorship or you were still for the war on drugs, I'd be like, okay, that's kind of fucked up. So if that's just like that corner of the thing, then sure. But like, I don't know. I all I would say is you should probably read Peter Kropotkin. You might find him very engaging and entertaining because he advocates, hey, what if you just went a little bit more libertarian and you realize that all hierarchies have a burden of proof that need to be established and that we can actually organize our entire society without the need for states. For example. Yeah, libertarian socialist is a synonym for anarcho-communist, but there's a lot of people out there who are, like, I think of like people like Emperor Tiger Star, who is pretty derisive and dismissive of anarchists, but calls himself a libertarian socialist, and I'm just like, bruh. I don't think that word means what you think it means. Suppose a virus killed everyone in North Korea over 15. Who would take over, South Korea or China? Probably China, to be honest. Yeah. Is there a difference between left and right anarchism? Yes. There are some, like, there's, like, anarchism in general is associated with with left-wing politics. But there is sort of a branch of right-wing politics that has been inspired by some individualist anarchist writers that then mixed with anti-civil rights movement, reactionary politics, and neoliberalism and classical liberal what's it called, capitalist extremism, and you end up with this weird cabal of anarcho-capitalists and sort of what in America you would call libertarians. But this sort of political trend tends to, their libertarianness tends to only apply to white people overall. These sort of libertarians that don't tread on me guys, the ANCAPs and stuff like that, seem to very easily become fascists if you poke them hard enough. So it seems, I don't know, I doubt they always use freedom as a way to justify them wanting to curb people's civil rights and bring back slavery, and it's that doesn't feel very, doesn't feel very anarchist. I haven't met any libertarians who seem to be allowed to let leftists live in their own communes and not deal with you, but whatever. I should expect toxic bread tubers like Bad and Panada to represent socialism. Yeah, I don't know. It looks like he just stepped out of the space-time continuum. Oh yeah. This is where I'm going through the part where we watched the Noam Chomsky video. Did you know the Theodosian walls were knocked down by an earthquake in the 440s, but the Romans rebuilt them in 2 months because there were Huns in the area? Isn't slave labor awesome? Oh God. Does Noam Chomsky still teach? No, he's been a professor emeritus for I think over a decade now. My supervisor one of my supervisors for my PhD went to MIT, and he actually took a course with Chomsky, which is pretty cool. Noam literally looks like the cartoon dwarves in the animated Hobbit movie. Oh dear. Chomsky's been pushing hard for Biden in swing states. Yeah. I think that I think Chomsky has a much more dismal view of the capacity of Americans to push for progressive change than I do. This is tone policing. That was nauseating. Is Noam Chomsky a revolutionary or a reformist, and what is his ideology? Fairly often, Noam Chomsky is an anarchist. At least he says he is. Though he does seem to discourage anything more intense than protest movements and stuff like that. He was a big fan of Occupy Wall Street, but he really doesn't like. I think he's really convinced that anarchism is not really a thing for today. It's a thing for 300 years from now. At the moment, what we need to be doing is damage control of the neoliberal project. And so he's been pro Bernie as a chance to make progressive change. Hey, thank you, Undead Pixel 1. Thank you for following. He's been really big. He was a really big fan of Bernie, and now he's pushing for Biden because he wants to prevent socialism in America. And I get both those impulses. I in my more darker days, I think that Chomsky's a little out of touch with the youngest generation. Is this the reactor? No, it's not. Yesterday I said that Azerbaijan is a dictatorship because the president typically wins elections by over 80%. If someone wins an election by over 80%, is it safe to assume it was rigged? Not necessarily. It's just that, it's definitely something to investigate. Somebody wins by that much, it's definitely an election that should have its results analyzed. Hierarchy can't exist in a libertarian society. Isn't a blend best? I don't exactly know what that means. So that's the thing is, like, there's this sort of thing about Noam Chomsky, which is that he has this idea of anarchism as being a development of liberal ideas, like the furthest extent of liberal ideas, which means that, but also with socialist ideas, because he is definitely on the very far on the political left. But Chomsky's like, Chomsky's idea is that like the ideas that liberal thinkers, the kind of Enlightenment liberal thinkers of the early modern period talked about with life and liberty and stuff like that are ideas that anarchists also share, just more so. And he does seem to have more of an emphasis on those ideas rather than the more socialist ideas of tangible, edible political change. But I think that has more to do with the fact that he's pretty beaten down by 90 years of watching socialist movements fail. Cancel culture is actually just consequences, yeah. The other thing, too, is that Chomsky is the author of... is one of the authors of Manufacturing Consent. And so in many ways, I think that he sees a lot of this activism as through the lens of how the media is going to spin it to make them look bad. And so he thinks that, a way to make political change for the left is by having a political movement that the media has trouble spinning as bad, or at least being aware of that, because I think that, that's how he studies, right? There are sometimes leftist speakers on campus, but they are incidentally left. They are for some other reason than their ideology. I don't know. I've seen, in my experience with university speakers, like I said, I've seen lots of liberals come and talk. Maybe seeing leftists come and talk if their discussion of their talk has nothing to do with criticizing capitalism. I don't know. People don't realize the universities are not these like socialist institutions they think they are. They're typically liberal institutions. I taught a class on Reagan for a U.S. history course once, and after the lecture, I got a bit of a talking to for criticizing capitalism and criticizing Reagan, which that was not pleasant. And like I said, the closest thing we had to a speaker who talked about class politics and class warfare. Destroyed an entire department for doing it because all the donors backed out. So, is the example that cancel culture or that universities don't have free speech for the left is emblematic in the sense that I have not been invited to any university to speak, and that is a travesty. Is Belarus a communist state, at least as much as the USSR was? I don't think so. I mean, I actually don't know. They did kind of Lukashenko did keep a bunch of old Soviet era, the economy is still mostly state owned, so I guess it is basically kind of Soviet era communism. The delay of me sending that to him receiving it was massive. Yeah, I'm always behind. That's sort of how this works. It's part of my charm is I just, I read through the chat, I talk about it, and when I get caught up, which is usually about 2 hours into the stream, then we do something else. But, yeah. I don't want to leave anybody behind, as long as I can afford to do that. Oh. All right, let's see. Within a university, a club can be formed and speakers can be invited. Okay. The nursing department in my college enforces strict protocols when dealing with bad professors, but I know if I ever reach an impasse, I can talk to the chairwoman of the academic affairs department in an independent office. Well, that's good. People who want to become Canadian citizens still have to swear loyalty to the Queen. This is also true. PSA, if your workplace hierarchy is corrupt and won't help you, go directly to HR. They are supposed to be independent and neutral. Supposed to be. What the fuck is the Progressive Conservatives? The Progressive Conservatives were the political party in Canada. They still exist at a few provincial levels. But basically the idea behind the Progressive Conservatives is that they're a political party that is progressive on social issues but conservative on economic stuff. It's the kind of political party that represents the... it's represented a lot of Canadian history, or a lot of Canadian history and leaders and stuff. Like the Ontario, like the federal version of the Progressive Conservatives dissolved in 2003, but the Progressive Conservatives in Ontario still exist. The Progressive Conservatives in Alberta have been merged with the Wild Rose Party into the UCP. What happened was that in the early 90s, the Progressive Conservatives had a big collapse. Because Brian Mulroney was just such a disliked prime minister by the end. And when that happened, the Canadian Alliance, which is sort of a more far-right party that was led by Stockwell Day, became more of the right. And throughout the 90s, the Liberals enjoyed a massive majority because the Conservative Party was essentially split. It wasn't until 2003 when they merged and made the Conservative Party of Canada that things really changed. And now the Conservatives and the Liberals duke it out about who's going to run things. What's the connection between soccer fans and their racist attitudes to immigrants and people of color? No idea. I don't know much about. So Kelly has Canadian citizenship now. Would that happen if she traveled to Cuba? Canadian citizens are now allowed, but Americans aren't. If we were to go to Cuba, she would probably just not take her American passport. For the most part, people won't care.
Hey, how far behind are you in chat?
How far behind am I in chat? I'm currently reading a message from 7:26. So I guess I'm like 30-something minutes behind the chat. Thank you for the subscription, Birdie. You're an absolute gem. You know how Romans were shorter and less healthy than Northern Europeans, and Northern Europeans were shorter and less healthy than Native Americans? When did being closer to civilization stop being incredibly bad for you? Good question. Probably around the early 20th century. It was around the early 20th century that we started figuring out vitamins and minerals for the most part. And the increase in real wages probably in the mid 20th century, like the 50s and stuff like that, meant that you could actually afford to live in a city and also not be around tons of diseased people and also have access to, antibiotics and also access to vegetables. That's the kinds of... It's relatively recently. Are fascists aware that Germans and ancient Greeks and Romans hated each other? No, I mean, probably not. They don't seem to have much of a... they're not very self-aware about the actual history of Europe at all. they also like they also say like, oh, like the Vikings and stuff are part of that legacy too, and it's like, what the fuck? And also they rewrite history, like they like, you know, fascists are very homophobic, and then they also are like, you know, ancient Greece is part of the Western canon, and is like, dude. If Trump loses, what do you predict him doing? How long will it take for him to admit defeat? It really depends upon the size of the victory. So that makes me think that he might drag it out a very, very long time if it's, like, close. If it's not close, if Biden, like, just blows out the entire election, I don't see that being a... I don't know, I can see him trying, but really his ability to deny the results of the election is based on how well the people with guns can will go with it. So if the Secret Service, the Secret Service does what it does, then you're not going to end up in a situation where, or what's it called? Trump will be out of power one way or another. But if they don't, that's where things get more hairy and dangerous. So I know we're not like them as much as the Lower Decks characters, but am I alone in thinking that the USS Cerritos senior staff are total assholes, especially Jack Ransom? Maybe a little bit. I think so. I think that's kind of like... I think, because, like, if I remember the Lower Decks episode of The Next Generation, you showed that from, like, the perspective of the ensigns and stuff like that, that a lot of the senior staff were seen as sort of mean and overbearing bosses, too. So it's sort of, I think, playing on that. But, yeah, I mean, the security chief seems pretty... like, the big buff Bajoran guy, he seems pretty good. He seems like a nice guy. Even the XO. Oh, yeah, I guess the XO is a bit of a prick because of the last episode, but yeah. I would see China's economy tanking, losing a major trading partner. I would see China's economy tanking as... Yeah, China and America are sort of in this dance of, like, consumers and producers that if it broke, it would be pretty tough for... Their economy will take a huge hit. But if America tanks, if America goes into civil war and everything goes to hell, the whole world's like, America is like the biggest consumer on Earth. Like a lot of people are going to lose a lot of their livelihoods, myself included. Big Joel has an interesting video on educational TV segments in America post-war, talking about how they construct the idea of an eternal history where the war never happened and America had always been made of conservative nuclear families. Perhaps it could fit into Echo's idea of fascism. Yeah. The YouTube stream is more reliable, but he didn't watch the chat there. I do watch the chat. People don't know. This person's making a lot of assumptions about how the chat works. I will say that I do read the chat. I read them as they come to me. They come on YouTube and Twitch. It's all mixed together, and I am reading it on time. Just because I'm always like half an hour behind doesn't mean I'm not paying attention. American refugees will be way worse than other refugees. They won't do the construction or anything. Just complain constantly. Who knows? There's like a little bit of... that's like actually one of my favorite things in... what's it called? The Handmaid's Tale, right? Is there's that... there's like a neighborhood in Toronto called Little America because of all of the Americans who... the refugees from America who have settled in Toronto. Or from Gilead or whatever. I thought it was really cool, that whole thing. But... Yeah... I don't like the negative portrayal of refugees, of American refugees is actually talked about in what's it called, in the podcast. It Could Happen Here. I think there's a whole episode about the American refugee crisis. And, I mean, I'm not the kind of person who will ever demonize refugees. If American refugees start showing up, just guaranteed I'll be on the side of the refugees. Couldn't Japan prevent that by just manufacturing nukes? I've read that Japan considered a de facto nuclear nation because they could easily make nukes if they felt they had to. Yeah, I guess they could. It's not again. I don't know. I'm sure it's not against. It's not out of bounds. But still, they would have they have a geopolitical strategy that's very reliant on having a weak military, but having a strong U.S. military presence. And if that ends, they're going to have to seriously rethink their geopolitical strategy. I kind of feel like decolonization is incompatible with democracy, at least in countries where the natives are outnumbered, because most people would never vote to be getting rid of settler colonial governments they live under. Am I wrong? I mean, sure, people won't vote. Like, if someone were to vote, if somebody, like, stole something from somebody else, and then they had to be like, hey, do you want to return this object you stole to another person? They would probably vote against that. But, that's not exactly it's not exactly like a good, it's not exactly the person we need to be talking to, is it? Why do you not like History Matters? I just find that a lot of History Matters videos are very thin. Like the very surface level. I appreciate you, sir. What label will be applied to the current historical moment 20, 40, and 60 years from now? Really depends upon how it ends, but my guess is that it would probably be called the Panic of 2008, or the I think that, yeah, there's going to be like a moment where called, like, I think 2008 is going to be the moment where things changed, and it's just be kind of like I don't know, the panic. Everybody goes with like recession and depression, but I think we should go with the panic of 2008, or the long recession, or something like that. On the History Matters thing, hey, Warhead 458, thank you for following, and thank you so much, Jake Anderson. I appreciate the super chat. It really helps. In my experience with History Matters, the channel's just very superficial, and doesn't really go in depth on any topic, doesn't really talk about, answers a lot of what and not a lot of why, and is also has this sort of like flippant sense of humor that makes a lot of light of like very dark chapters of world history. And you know me, I like my content sincere, and not laughing at like a war that killed millions of Congolese people, that kind of stuff. Multiculturalism is an antagonism. I don't agree. Multiculturalism can be a strength if you embrace it. There's a lot of times where like the most diverse societies became the strongest because they had such a flourishing of development in different areas. For example, the entire Islamic Golden Age was because multiple different religious and ethnic groups were working together and supported, and like it resulted in this like huge explosion of cultural and scientific development that, after the Islamic world sort of shattered, didn't really come back in any didn't come back meaningfully until the Ottoman Empire sort of rebuilt part of it. A country will function better if the people in it have the same ideology as people ruling it. This is undeniable. I mean, I guess, but also I don't believe in dictatorships, I'm not a fascist, so I don't really want that to be a world that people live in. I don't think that ideological unity is something that should happen. I think that feels very authoritarian. I'm voting for Trump because I think long-term if Biden wins, it'll mean the libs ruin the country. If Trump wins, we still have a chance for socialism. Otherwise, it's slow death. Oh, God, Eternal Seth. That is not a good take. That is not a good take. I am sorry. I do not agree. I think you have a lot of takes that are in my mind, rather reactionary. Anti-multiculturalism, a belief in ideological purity, and voting for Trump. Sounds like you might be a Nazi. Just putting it out there. Have you looked into authoritarianism? Have you looked into fascism? It sort of fits all the things you want. All right, whatever. Move on. They're not causing trouble. The other day, one of the liberal podcasters, the guy in front of the bookcase, said that we should maybe want Biden to tack to the right if statistics show he's more likely to win that way. Response to that. The thing is, it seems to show that the statistics do not show that that is a successful strategy. And yet he's doing it anyway. Like, there's this just idea that, like, him going to the right is working, but it's like, it's really not. It's the more right wing, like, the more, like, think about it, like, not even like with this, but like Elizabeth Warren backtracking on Medicare for all is like the single biggest thing responsible for her downfall. And like Joe Biden tacking to the right has shown in the last few weeks to do nothing but show his support tank. Poll after poll are showing that his support is going down and down the more that he like backs away from Medicare for all, and the more like and more conservative he makes his platform. So, yeah. There are accelerationists in the Twitch chat. Oh boy. Fun, fun, fun. I think I may be voting for Howie Hawkins. Here's the thing, though. I'm not authoritarian, so I'll let you keep talking as long as you don't say bigoted shit and slurs. But I'm under no predilection to, agree with you. I think I may be voting for Howie Hawkins. I live in Illinois, and that will be blue no matter who. I'd rather give the Greens, who have Medicare for all as a priority, more visibility than ways to vote. You can try, like, that is a way that people are thinking that, like, if you vote for the Green Party, you're going to give them some sort of, like, attention. But, like, the Green Party already has, like, people know the Green Party exists. They're a known quantity. People just don't vote for them because the Electoral College is basically designed to make sure that they never, ever, 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 ever will take power if they just go for the presidential run. Like, there has never been a successful third-party run for the presidency ever. All they usually do is maybe win a few states and pull away enough votes to cause the people they're most ideologically aligned with to lose. This is why, like, I have fundamental disagreements with the Green Party's strategy of only run for the presidency is everything, that somehow they can just overcome the Electoral College and not just be a spoiler ballot against Democrats. It's like, okay. I'd really much prefer if the Green Party ran congressional candidates and stuff like that, but I don't know. They're dedicated to the strategy of just being a protest vote to result in more Republican victories, so here they are. Some majors at schools do have minimum grades higher than D required for your major courses. You get credits with a D, but you might need a C to count towards your major, for example. There might also be a GPA minimum, not too high, though, usually like 2 or 2.5. Yeah, just like oftentimes if you go to university, you probably had pretty good grades in high school. And so my take is that don't treat your grades in university like you treat your high school grades. Because in high school, the grades mattered more. And here, you just want to do enough to get the degree, if that is what you're going for. I think religion in general is contrary to running a healthy government. Okay, cute. Whatever you say. Say you're becoming a software development because that's what I know, and your classmates will go to all different companies when you graduate. There's a high chance that your second job will be going somewhere where one of your classmates already works. Not that classmates already do that kind of thing. Networking matters, so keep an open mind. Yeah, very true. Very important. Having that sort of network of people who are in your major or in your field or even not in your field, because very few people actually get to work in the field that they took in university, but it helps. Alas, I am needed to maintain a grade average to stay in my degree, so I did not get too much of a chance to socialize much. I also had 4 hours of travel each day. That'll fuck you up. Also, like, yeah, what I said doesn't really apply to people who are in, like, programs like the hard sciences and engineering, because very often, like, people in, like, mechanical engineering and stuff like that have to be working, like, all the time just to pass. Like, some programs are very different. My experience is obviously in the humanities, which is a little bit of a different thing. Do networking-based ways of finding employment result in people with poor social skills being disadvantaged? Yup. Yes, it does. It does reflect a job market that, in the wake of computers and computerization and, you know, automation and stuff like that, that a lot of the jobs of the future, or a lot of the jobs of the present, let alone the future, kind of need social skills to be effective at them. And so, in some ways, it's trying to select for skills that are good for the job. But yeah, it does. It does mean that it makes it harder for people who don't have social skills to get jobs. There won't be a fascist versus socialist war. It'll be a fascist versus lib civil war. No, it'll be a fascist and libs versus socialist civil war. Do you know what time the RNC starts tonight? Nope. Boomers for Loomer. Jeez. The mouse tank was the dumbest idea, as it is a bullseye for planes. Yeah, the mouse tank was a terrible idea. The rats was a even bigger version, wasn't it? They were a waste of money and resources. Yes, they were. Just ate cookies, THC style. Nice. What do you think about Maduro, Castro, Jinping, Putin, and Khomeini? Guess we can go one at a time. Maduro. I mean, Maduro's. I don't have. Oh, here we go. I have some super chats. I'll go into this in a second. Thank you, Matt Lipton, for the $5 super chat. Also, apparently, Biden's DNC speech was cribbed off of a Jack Layton speech, or so I've heard. Yeah, there is something to be said to that. I don't know how true it is. Like, I read it, and it sounds... So what it is that part of his speech sounds like that... If you remember, Matt, when Jack Layton died, he had those, like, kind of, like, farewell words about, like, hope being stronger than fear and, like, all that kind of stuff. If we can get them all together, we'll change the world. And what he said in his speech kind of sounded like that. It's not like it's not as bad as what he did in 1988. It is like it's not a word for word plagiarism, but it does seem like he took the kind of general idea and ran with it. So another conservative stealing ideas from the NDP. All right, Maduro. I mean, the way that I would say is, yeah, there are definitely things to criticize Maduro over, his management of the economy and stuff like that. But things that you really can't criticize Maduro over is saying that he didn't win the election that he got elected in, which he did win. Juan Guaido did not even run in the election that he won. Like, if Juan Guaido wanted to, you know, take Maduro's job, he could run in the next election, but instead he's going to Western countries to try and get them to do a coup so that he can be president of Venezuela, which is like that's not my preference. But like, yeah, I don't really like to draw too much attention. I don't like to criticize Maduro because right now, the whole line is about trying to take him out of office and replace him with a right-wing dictator, and I'm like, no thanks. Castro, mean, Castro was a decolonizer, performed economic miracles. Some concerns over having political prisoners, but I haven't read enough about that to have like as strong a state. But goddamn, Fidel Castro was a fucking miracle worker in his country, making Cuba survive and stick to its principles despite the U.S. doing literally everything to destroy them is a pretty impressive task. Xi Jinping does seem like, I mean, Xi Jinping is keeping up that sort of like Chinese democracy or Chinese capitalism. I don't like capitalism. And Xi Jinping also seems to be really interested in centralizing power around himself and ruling for life. So, yeah, not a fan of that. Putin is just a right-wing autocrat. Like, I have no reason to like Vladimir Putin. He's expanding Russia's imperial ambitions and basically is a like far-right oligarch. Like, I have no love for Putin. Khomeini is, again, he's anti-American, but like, okay, he's also like a very right-wing theocrat, which I'm not a super big fan of. And for the record, a lot of Iranians aren't either. Why is it wrong to tell a suffering person that they still have to vote for the greater good? I feel like the left sometimes puts being understanding and compassion over objective understanding of the morality of the greater good. Cause, you know, it's not really like, what's it called? What is the greater good to you is definitely not the greater good to them. Like, I don't know. It seems like there's a bad precedent of people who have no experience about what someone else is going through, going up to them and then saying, hey, I know that you have your own thoughts and your own opinions, but I want you to defy them because I want you to do this. And it's not good form, and it's not a thing that we should be like in the world of doing. Unless, you know, you're actively hurting people, which, like, you know, not voting for Joe Biden isn't a war crime. Let's see. I think got a little bit of a scroll to see where we. Okay. I'm gonna take a quick washroom break. 1 second. Enjoy the music, and I'll be back in a moment. But we are about halfway through the stream, and I should probably go to the washroom. I'll be right back. Hey everybody, I'm back. Sorry for that. I had to take a little break. We're about halfway through the show, and I was like, why doesn't America use a parliamentary system? Do the Americans just want to reject the British model, or was it a more practical need because of the fighting of the British at the time? The American system was set up, the American system as we know it now wasn't set up during that time. What they had before was something called the Articles of Confederation government. What America has now came out of the Constitutional Convention. And most of it was drawn to be a compromise for a bunch of different factors. One of the things they wanted to do was to make sure that there was democracy, but they didn't want too much democracy because they thought that if the pores said anything, then they also wanted then it would be anarchy and it would be terrible. And also they needed to balance power between the slave states and the non-slave states. And so a lot of things like the balance of power between the Senate and the House and like the Electoral College were made to make sure that there was a compromise between slave states and non-slave states based on slave states being able to count their slave population as 3/5 of a human being. Let them have a large population and representation for political systems, but didn't allow black people to vote, obviously. And America kind of believes that their constitution is magical holy writ that comes from heaven, so they don't really want to change it. They can't do that kind of thing. On a similar theme, suppose presented to you with compelling evidence that accelerationism will work in the long run. Would you then support it, or would you say the fact that it involves making disadvantaged people suffer in the short term still makes it wrong? I would take that way. I would say that I would never involve myself in a decision that hurts people, disadvantaged people. Like that boomer guy, thoughts I'm responding to, is raging on the First Nations land of defenders. Yeah, I think so. Okay. I would be an anarchist if it weren't for the fact that hierarchies arise naturally. The real issue is that people aren't held to the same standard. I disagree with that. I don't see, what's it called? Hierarchies have a lineage, and they're not, and what's it called? Yeah, there's going to need to be, some, social restructuring once the revolution comes or whatever. But, because we do have, a kind of culture that feeds off of individualism and will to power as being, virtues. But I think that there are ways to prevent those kinds of hierarchies. And even if hierarchy, complete ahierarchical society is impossible, I think that any reasonable anarchist would say that's probably the case. That we should at least move towards as little hierarchy as possible. And if there is going to be any form of hierarchy, like say a committee chairman on a committee on a what's it called, on a commune council or something like that, that position should be either, that position should have its power or who it belongs to limited as much as possible. You could end up having to have commune chairman for a year, but then I would say that that's a situation where you would want to make sure that it's like a sortition type system and it rotates people out once a year or something like that, so that no one person gets stuck in power for too long, and to also keep their duties rather limited to the specific things that they have authority over. So in many ways, if hierarchies do emerge, to plan for that and keep them as limited in scope and as hard to turn into established power and capacity for violence as possible. Is Bad Empanada toxic? I don't know. He's grumpy, but I don't see him toxic. Bad Empanada is just, what's it called? Hot-blooded. He likes to fight. If you lived in the Star Trek universe, would you still be advocating for a less hierarchical society? Does whether or not we live under unjust hierarchy still matter if all of our needs are met? I would still, yeah. I mean, look at the Star Trek universe. This utopian society has created Section 31 and does have sort of a cultural expansionist message. For example, if you watch like Deep Space Nine, the way that the Federation deals with the Bajorans is very dismissive of their culture, and is very much like, when are you guys going to stop being so religious so that you can join our club? And it's like, first of all, there's no reason that they have no reason to need to join your club. Second of all, stop telling them to change their culture so that they can join your club. Like, they like very obviously act like they know better. And so like, and you know, Section 31 and shit. So there's like a lot of reasons to think that there's serious problems with the way the Federation runs itself. And I would definitely be advocating to get rid of, I would definitely be an anarchist who would be trying to abolish Starfleet and stuff like that. All right. My dad asked me if I like Chomsky. I said he's a lib. I would never call Chomsky a lib. I would say that Chomsky is, he is still an anarchist. He is still a leftist. He's just, he just has a different approach to electoralism than I agree with. We really got to stop, like, what's it called? His disagreements with me are not profound enough for me to disavow him or anything like that. I think he's done more work for the cause of the left than any of us will ever do in our lifetimes. And so I would caution against cutting him off. Like, there's a lot to be, like, what's it called? We should definitely not be so insular as to completely reject people who disagree with us on things. As long as they're not, like, you know, anti-human rights or something. But that's, you know, there are definitely lines that should not be crossed. But for the most part, like, I'm fine with having disagreements with Chomsky and still thinking that he's a very inspirational thinker who's done a lot for the global left and has made the world a better place for having been in it. Remember how I said Turtle Dove did a book where slave owners replaced their black slaves with cavemen? I do remember this. Do you think that treating early hominids like property would be wrong? I mean, if Homo erectus was around today, should we treat them like people or animals? I mean, what I would say, the right answer, the Mexi answer, is that the way you treat people and the way you treat animals shouldn't be different. You know, you should extend human rights. You should extend rights to all animals, but definitely comes into the gray area. But I would say that if we're going to treat like whales as non-animal or non-human sapiens or something like that, there's been like some campaigns to give some animals like dolphins and whales some degree of human rights, and I'm not against that idea, and I think that in this case it would depend upon where they were, but that seems like a situation I would agree with. You know, Ethereal Seth, for a leftist, you do seem to be you're against democracy, workplace democracy, so you're against workers controlling the means of production. Like, where's the left part? This just sounds like fascism. Is McCarthyism and Reaganism a pure reason why American workers vote Republican in big business? The pure reason? I don't think it's the only reason. There are multiple reasons, but it also has to do with a long history of of racial hierarchies and white supremacy in America. That says a lot. Definitely the propaganda campaign of the right that happened starting in the 60s and kind of goes to today, that has been very effective at dismantling class consciousness and weakening the union movement. I would say the weakening of unions definitely had a big role in it. And yeah, McCarthyism was very damaging to the organized left in America. So was the first Red Scare, the Palmer raids and stuff like that. That was also very damaging to the left in America. I did a whole video on it. All right. The delay of me sending that to him and receiving it was massive. Yeah, I am 47 minutes behind. Something makes me think that Tristan is not going to we're not going to get to Jackbox today, I don't think. Which sucks because my throat is fucking wrecked from filming 2 videos today, so I'm like, my throat wants to die. Tomorrow I am editing all day, and I only have to on Wednesday night play D&D and run D&D, so I have all day to recover. Hey, thank you for the bit. If your throat hurts, let's go straight to Jackbox. Haha. People, I don't think you know, people get fucking livid if I don't answer their question in a timely order. And I want to make sure that nobody feels like they came here and watched me talk. And I didn't, do the thing. Maybe you should just relax then? No, I'm good. I just need to, it's only like what? It's only another hour or so. I can do that. All right. Do you get first past the post voting, or do you have a better voting system? Oh, Canada uses first past the post voting. Our current prime minister is in power despite getting less votes than the Conservatives. Or should I say our Conservative Party and our other Conservative Party. So we have one Conservative Party in power because the other Conservative Party got got more votes, though. Southern European cities and countries have more sunlight. Southern European cities and countries have more sunlight. And isn't it like vitamin C or vitamin D that helps bone strength and build? I don't remember. If a registered group like a right-wing one within a public university invite a speaker, the university has to accommodate that person. I think that's what the commentator was trying to say. You think that's wrong? What I'm more saying is that the right wing group is the one that has the money to invite to have the speaker come over, because usually the university doesn't the university gives money to the club, and the club pays for a lot of that stuff. But sometimes in a speaker series they do it anyway. But in the explicit case that you're speaking of, where a registered group like a club or something invites them, typically they pay for that stuff. And in that case, the university having them come to speak is a tacit endorsement of their position, which, or at least a tacit endorsement that the thing that they have to come and speak is something worth coming to speak about, which is like not super fun. And fairly often, right-wing speakers are invited to come to universities as an explicit statement that they do not agree with progressive values. That's happened a few times. Like a lot of the times, like that there was this like disruption that was going on. What I've learned is that there's a lot of context in each of these cases. That the simplified narrative of baby millennials don't want public speakers to come who have controversial opinions is so overly reductionist that it misses a lot of the actual importance of what's going on. If you had to live in a U.S. state, what parameters would you go by? For example, New Hampshire has the lowest poverty rate by 6.7%, which imply lower crime and greater safety. I don't know. If I lived in America, I don't know where I'd want to live. Maybe Seattle or something like that. Seattle or, I don't know, Burlington or something. Problem is, like, the progressive places that are good to live are not very diverse, which is kind of not great. I don't know. I can't really think of a place in America that I'd be like super happy to live in. Maybe one of those like progressive havens in the American Southwest, like what's it called? I don't know. Texas. Try to think of there's a city in Texas, like any of those like kind of like liberal enclave cities in Texas. Those might be pretty good. Like Austin or something. I think Kate Jacobson called out that part in The Handmaid's Tale by saying that if it was real life, Canada would turn back American refugees too. It's probably not. It's probably dependent a lot on who's in charge of Canada at that point. They don't really go into too much detail about how Canadians would have handled the disease that made people infertile, really. But like, yeah, I wouldn't put it past like a conservative government, for example, to be anti-refugee. Although, you know, the majority of Americans are white, and that changes the dynamic a bit. And there'd probably be some like stupid. They probably put some stupid requirements in place about their like need to have certain levels of education or income, or like some sort of like amount of money to live or something that would result in us disproportionately letting in white Americans and leaving people of color out in the dust. That feels like something Canada would do. Would American refugees really have to worry about being mistreated abroad? They have white privilege on your side. Yeah, that is a factor. But America does have this like reputation of being a bully abroad, and if a civil war happened and America was laid low, I wonder if a lot of countries that have been the targets and the victims of American imperialism would be less than charitable towards American refugees, but who knows? I could see that certain Protestant sects might be treated like Muslims if America has a civil war, like the podcast due to Christian dominionism. Yeah, I could definitely see there was that idea that like, and I think that would be the thing. Like, if there was a American refugee crisis in Canada, the thing that I think that they would use to make like an anti-refugee case would be saying that they're too socially conservative. If they come in, all of a sudden they're going to vote to take away our health care. They're going to vote to or they're going to try to take away our health care. They're going to bring there's people who are completely delusional about Canada who would say that they're going to bring racism. They're going to bring all the bigotries and stuff like that. When all that shit exists here, but that is definitely a thing that people might say. And yeah, Christian dominionism in the podcast anyway, they commit a bunch of acts of terrorism, which sort of turns people off anybody who's too religious when they come into the country. Suppose everyone in the U.S. over 14 dropped dead. What would it mean for the rest of the world if the U.S. descended into the bad kind of anarchy? A lot of the things I already said. The kind of situation that I was gaming out in my head was all stuff that would happen if just America just ceased being a significant player on the world stage. Should I just get rid of YouTube chat rather than Twitch? I'm not into fascism, but I am yeah, here we go. The Mediterranean has always been a bastion of culture. That's largely because it's the center of many different civilizations. That's true. Do you think anti-Biden leftists should swallow their pride and vote for the sake of damage control? My father has a heart disease, and his meds and therapies became more expensive with Trump's Obamacare cuts. Just voting for Biden has a small chance of healthcare improving. I think I've said on a. Oh, am I dropping frames or something? Anyways, I'm on the record saying that if I lived in America, I would vote for Biden. But I am not at all interested in playing the game of trying to tell what's it called? I'm not in the game of trying to tell people how to vote. That's my take. I would say that if you're asking my advice, I would say to vote for Biden because, yeah, the incurring fascism of a second Trump administration is a pretty big threat, but that's a decision you have to make for yourself. I'm not what's it called? There are very legitimate reasons to say you won't vote for Biden for the fact that if you're a victim of sexual assault, there's probably pretty legit reasons why you wouldn't vote for Biden, but yeah. Why is Biden losing more likely than a week ago? You offhandedly said that yesterday, but his polling is up from last week. His polling with independents is way down, and his the horse race polls in the what's it called? In the swing states is doing worse. His lead has shrunk dramatically in the key states that he would need to win in order to win the Electoral College. Let me take a look at what 538's saying these days, because he was at 71 out of 100 in the what's it called, in the forecast before, and now he is, let's see, 73. So it's gotten slightly better, but I don't know. Biden just this is so his lead. The other thing, too, is his lead compared to Hillary Clinton at the same time right now is way lower. That's the part that scares me. Do you think there will ever be a fascist versus social civil war in the United States? Starting to look more likely. I already answered that one a long time ago. I don't think there are enough socialists, sadly. The thing about engineering degrees is they need to prepare students to take the PE exam. Yeah, I can imagine. What's it called? All the people who I knew who were like in pre-med and who were in like engineering and stuff like that, that program fucking kills them. Oh my god. Mechanical engineering is way too much in way too short of amount of time. And like you'll end up with stuff like, I don't know, a lot of times I see like in engineering and biology and stuff like that. Like I did the exam, I got 12%, but I got bell curved up to an A-. And I'm like, wait, what? Like we don't really bell curve, at least in the humanities, as far as I can tell. At least when I marked, I never ended up in a situation where I was marking on a bell curve. But it's so weird. But also, I've never had a multiple choice test in history, so there's that. I nearly rented a house that had a mural of Che in the living room. That's kind of neat. What's your opinion on the debate bros like Destiny, Vaush, and Zenderhall? I'm not a fan of any of those guys. I find that internet debates, like I'm not a fan. Okay. We're going to reset and have a conversation about debates. That sounds like a good thing to talk about. So, debate bro culture. There's been this growing thing in online left spaces, or just online political spaces, of promoting like debate bro or debate culture. And it seems to be, it's majority men, but not all men. But it has this like framing of political debate that I really don't like, which is, first of all, a lot of them get involved in legitimizing positions that are completely fucked up. Like having a debate with somebody over whether or not a certain group of people deserve human rights, or just having generic debates. Like, it feels a lot like, what's a good way to describe it? I said that it feels more like WWE, and like there's no, like, in my mind, if you're going to have a debate, first of all, people have to agree that that the topic is worth debating. So, for example, like for the most, like, this is why I don't get like general debates. Like, we're just going to meet and debate about stuff. Like, I don't know. I don't get the point. Like, as long as there's a subject that both you and another person can be actually convinced about, it's not a debate. It's just an argument. And then they're marketed like it's WWE wrestling. Like, it's just these personalities clashing, these characters, sometimes literal cartoon characters. And then they meet up, and then they fight for about 2 hours, typically on topics that have to do with, they fight on topics that more or less have nothing to do with, or have to do with semantics. Like, they end up fighting about the definition of words for hours. Then they walk away. No one's opinion changes, but you've then exposed your entire audience to a group of far-right people, or people who, have these like abhorrent beliefs about other people. And, you get like this like tiny sliver of success stories of people who've been convinced by these debates. But then, I don't know, it feels like it's like a thing where you both rev up your audience, you collab, essentially, you get in a fight that no ground moves, nobody comes to a new understanding about anything, nobody has a productive conversation, and then it's over, and what have we gained? Has the world been made smarter? Has the conversation moved forward on anything? Has anything meaningful happened? And in my experience, it hasn't. And on top of that, in their effort to make more of like a WWE character, thing, you end up with like Destiny, who Destiny has shitty political opinions. He's like a fucking, like, he's basically like a right-wing, like, liberal type person, who like, did a racist talking to Luna, and like, I only know him because he was possibly the most shitty and like shitty person in competitive StarCraft 2 for a while, because he was like one of the most sore losers in the entire industry of StarCraft 2. And then like you end up with like people like Vosh, who his character that he plays is like, I don't give a fuck, I'm edgy. And then, you know, he channels that into calling trans people subhuman and saying the N-word. And because people, because he makes these characters, he makes these, like, force of personality type things, then he gets these, like, psychotically, like, adherent fans. And so when he does stuff like groom teenagers and shit like that, people just sort of give him a pass. And I'm not happy with that. There's a difference between being, like, combative and Vosh. Vosh is, like, literally toxic. And Xander Hall I don't know very much about at all. I know that he exists. I don't know much about him, period. But I find the whole debate thing on Twitch very, like, obviously it's great content because so many people watch it. But I don't see the value in it personally. And if I was going to have somebody on my channel that I disagreed with on something, I would at least have it be a position where, like, that I feel is something that we can have a debate. And like, I don't know, like going on, like if I was going to have a debate with somebody, it would be over a topic that is actually worth having a debate about, like, as in we could both come to some sort of conclusion that would feel like it actually moved a conversation forward. Did Vosh groom or not just Zan, or mixing up the two? Wasn't there this whole thing about Vosh hitting on a 16-year-old? I know that, like, Xander Hall's got like a harem or something weird like that, but I don't know. I don't actually pay much attention to this shit, to be honest. But like he like basically got in shit for being a sex pest or something. Didn't he do that? Could be that I'm wrong, but it seems like... What is that 538 thing you just looked at? I looked at their election forecast. It's on their main page. But, yeah. They basically 73 out of 100 simulations, he wins. You think that was Xander Hall? Okay. I know that there was some weird, like, sex pesty thing that Vosh was up to, but... And he apologized for it or something. I don't know. Here, I'll put a link in the chat. I don't want to lose my place, though. All right. Yeah, you know what? That's it's a heavy accusation to make on somebody without a whole lot to go on. So I'll recuse myself and take back what I said about Vosh being grooming somebody. Obviously, it's not something that I should be weighing into a conversation on because unlike Vosh, I typically don't like to speculate on things unless I've actually like read and understood the thing that I am talking about. So, yeah. I mean, what you said earlier wasn't really clear to answer my question. So what do you do if a majority of people in a settler state won't vote for it being dismantled? I feel like you have to decide between colonization and democracy. I mean... Okay, so this is like part of a greater question. So 255 has been on this long thing about settler colonial states are good and that like indigenous people have no right to the land that was stolen from them anymore because now there's more people in the settler colonial state that there's more people in the settler colonial state now. So therefore, because there's more people there, their votes outweigh the people whose land it belongs to, and therefore don't worry about it. Which is like... I think that's oversimplifying the sort of like the issue of settler colonialism in like Canada and the U.S. And again, it's like right now the long-term thing. Oh, geez. Like the long-term project of decolonizing Canada is about trying to create a new and fair situation where Indigenous nations are, able to have come to some sort of agreement with each other, and right now. Decolonization is like maybe we shouldn't actively build oil pipelines through Indigenous sovereign territory, and actually acknowledge the land they do have, that they have the right to it, and not do that. Then we can talk about reappropriation of land, and especially I think most people would be on, or at least be open to the conversation about the fact that the Canadian government and the American government have huge swaths of territory that is just government-owned, like crown land, or I don't know what it's called in America, but like kind of like government-owned land that nobody is using, or it's being leased out to resource extraction corporations. And like, if we have land that's not privately owned, it's just owned by the government, I don't see any reason to not hand that over to local Indigenous nations. Especially if they can be like, if they can get the resources to take care of themselves. By the way, Duke of Fall, thank you for following. Much appreciated. So there's a lot of stuff about this. Right of first refusal also would be nice, but I think that if you're talking about democracy in this sense, like you're basically saying that if two wolves and a sheep vote to eat the sheep for dinner, then that's good. Which is, I think that it's a reductionist idea of how democracy works. But gotta be nicer. I have to stop. I can already tell that my energy levels are low and it's turning me into a snappy person, and I shouldn't be. I'm supposed to be friendly and nice. So I apologize to all the people. But yeah, for example, 90% of Canada is crown land, and that is land that could very easily just be handed over to Indigenous people. Very easily. And America is the same way. There is huge swaths of American land is public land, which could easily be handed over to the Indigenous nations that it belongs to. And where we go from after that is really dependent upon situations, but generally moving towards giving Indigenous people autonomy and self-sufficiency over their own things so that they can survive and thrive, and then leaving them the fuck alone and letting them be who they are, and interacting them with them on a nation-to-nation basis seems like a pretty good start. You aren't supposed to be anyway. You're human. Do what feels natural and don't push yourself as stressful. Well, you know how when you're tired, your patience gets snappy. And I have ADHD, which means that my patience is already much lower than the average person's. So I'm not being myself, I guess is the better way to say that. Because I'm down for getting pissed off if somebody sucks, but I'm getting mad about things that I shouldn't be getting mad about is what I'm saying. 255 is asking very normal questions, and I am just getting grumpy because I'm frustrated, because my brain is having trouble answering things. And you know why leftists tend to hate Vosh. Because he's a white guy who tells black nationalists what they can and can't do, or tells black nationalists that they're doing leftism wrong, and then, what's it called? And then talks about how he doesn't care about slurs, and then just like drops like tons of racial slurs. Like, yeah. Whatever. The grooming thing, I was like, I'm not going to confirm or anything like that, because I think that, like, I think I'm misremembering. There's something, but I don't know what it is. And it's bad to make any accusations without evidence. So there's that. But just the fact that I think I can just go on the racial slurs alone and be kind of good. I know. I have like two like other leftists who message me almost on a daily basis, trying to convince me to be nice to Vosh and to be nice and to say that that Vosh is good and is good actually, and that saying the N-word on a stream is not as bad as you think it is, and they're doing good work of converting the chuds. And I'm like, and one of them is also saying that I'm too mean to June, aka Shoe on Head, and that one I might actually be on board for, because it seems that, I don't know, I haven't seen her channel in a long time, but for somebody who has a history of, shitting on trans people, she showed up on the charity of the serfs the other day to raise money for a trans charity, which is like, okay, fine. As long as, like, I don't know where her I don't know where her other claim to fame, which is being strongly anti-feminist, is still, but who knows? Yeah. I have been reading about Fred Hampton, the Rainbow Coalition Black Panther leader who was assassinated by the FBI. Cool. Please read that. Debate bros tend to be unable to actually make good arguments because they buy into the idea of marketplace of ideas. The best arguments aren't made live. They're often revised and rethought. That is true. Do you know Terry and his reaction to history? Is a history teacher reaction to YouTube history channels? I don't know that. Has he reacted to my stuff? I feel like if he did, I would know about it. Let's see. Maybe I should put Fred Hampton on my list of things to look at. Fred Hampton. Okay. Let's see. Are you a fan of the Gorillaz virtual band? The only song I've ever heard is, what's it called? Windmills or whatever. And it's a good song. So, 100% of songs by the Gorillaz I've been a fan of, but that's because I've only really listened to one. I've been seeing on the BreadTube Reddit discussing Cody from Alternate History has political views. What are they? I haven't talked to Cody in probably like almost a year now, but the last I was talking to him, he was sort of a recovering conservative who has kind of become more open to socialist ideas. Like I think he was pro Bernie and stuff, but also is very deeply religious and very Catholic, and that sort of like he's kind of his biggest thing is that he's into like kind of like a Catholic socialism, which is like, all right, fine, sure, I'll take it. But and you can thank Emperor Tiger Star for pulling him aside and having that conversation. Bad empanada equals Latin temper. Isn't Bad empanada from Australia though? Like I know he lives in Argentina, but isn't he from Australia? Never got that Cody was religious. Yeah, he's Catholic. Very Catholic. And Emperor Tiger Star is actually pretty Christian too. That's why he was able to talk Cody into kind of becoming more left-wing, was because they were able to talk on religious grounds. Because Christianity can be used as a tool of, justice for the oppressed. When Christianity's, like, what's it called? Jesus Christ is probably one of the greatest socialist, fighters for the common person that there ever was. So, I'm glad that Christianity is a definite thing you can use to motivate people to become, to work for the benefit of all. Thank you, Wally, for following, by the way. How should anarchists respond to libs who say, well, I think representative government and cops seem like justified hierarchies? I would say, prove it. I say, because my answer as an anarchist is that they have a burden of proof. So please show me how humanity cannot absolutely be, like, how humanity absolutely cannot function without police and without governments, despite the fact that, like, the majority of human history was without governments or without states, and that the vast majority, like, there wasn't even police until, like, the 19th century, really. So please enlighten me about how states and police are necessary. Tell me how there is no other way to explain to me why there is absolutely no way to organize society that doesn't involve a state. And that without it, there's in all conditions, no time that it could ever happen. And every time that happens, they usually default to tautologies or teleology. Like, that's the way things are now, so therefore it has to be the thing that worked. Or tautologies, which is just like, it works because it works. It works because look at our society, and our society shows that it works, which is like, circular reasoning and stuff like that. Or they'll just use truisms that aren't true, like, well, human nature shows that we're all selfish. Like, prove it. I have a lot more research that says the otherwise. You think the problem with student loans is most politicians remember when a high school diploma offered a living wage? Yes, that is the problem. That is exactly the problem, is that politicians are all old fuckers or rich fuckers, which means that they never had to go into massive amounts of student loans to pay off their debts. And they never lived in a situation where if they didn't, like, everybody who's in politics is either rich enough that the financial burden of university was never an issue for them, or they're old enough that they lived in an economy where having a university education wasn't absolutely required in order to have a successful career, and even if they did, the university was so cheap that it was very easy to pay off. Or, even more likely, they don't give a fuck because they know that credit card companies and banks make a shit ton of money off of student loans, and the people who make a shit ton of money off student loans pay them bribes to basically keep things the way they are. Thank you, by the way, Zane, for the $5 super chat. It's much appreciated. You're helping keep the lights on. I think his roughness tends to come from constant engagements with neo-Nazis and such, but his theories of harm reduction are a lot more practical than black-pilled talkies who want to vote Trump. Steve Shives has done a lot of videos about Star Trek, including about how the Federation isn't as good as we think. Yeah, I used to watch Steve Shives, probably back in 2017. I've just kind of, I don't know. Yeah. Steve Shives is fine. He seems like a nice guy. His content is nice. It's just not for me. His sense of humor is not it doesn't tickle my brain. and his takes are a bit mainstream for my interest. Like I know what the center left position is on things, and I don't really like. I don't watch that many YouTube videos anymore. Like, and if I don't actually watch as many YouTube videos as I want to. Hey, power reveals. Give someone power. Peter Bilodeau. Hello, potential family member. Peter Bilodeau, are you related to French Canadians by any chance? I'll go and look at the things. Peter Bilodeau. If Peter Bilodeau is French Canadian, there is a fairly high chance that we're related. All right. What would you replace Starfleet with? Definitely a what's it called? Interlocking federations of like, what's it called? Spaceships that go and explore and maybe don't have giant lasers on them, and they're not focused on trying to get people to join the Federation. They just want to go out, scan nebula and vibe. Is it a soap opera moment? No. It's just that, what's it called? There's a lot of Bilodeaus in Quebec. This is true, but they all can trace their ancestry to like one guy in the 1600s, and I'm related to the Bilodeaus. It's kind of like a clan thing. So yeah, if Peter Bilodeau is a Bilodeau, then we are very distant relations. Probably we're probably part of the same very large family. Because like all Bilodeaus in Quebec are kind of related to each other. They're related to Jacques Bilodeau, who arrived in Quebec City in 1651 or something like that. And yeah, and because of Catholicism, there have been there's been a lot of stuff. Well, yeah, that before the Quiet Revolution, Quebecois people had fuck tons of babies. Hey there, been mostly lurking. Sorry that Steve Shives isn't for you. I get that he's kind of the middle of the road, but he helped me realize a lot of important things back in the day. Yeah, no worries, Fallout 2 Forever. I completely agree. I don't think that, like, obviously Steve Shives runs a good YouTube channel because there's lots of people who like him. It's just his work's not for me. But, like, I definitely am not going to... I'm definitely not going to disparage the work that he does and the stuff he does. He's obviously a very good yeah. My grandfather immigrated to Springfield, Massachusetts from Canada just before World War II. We are also related to the winery. So, Peter, we might be very, very, very distant relatives. Congratulations. Or, I'm sorry. But there actually are a bunch of people who are related to me who live in, like, the American Northeast. Yeah, so. Okay, let's see. I prefer the Culture than the Federation. I haven't read the Culture. Have you heard of the Battle of Blair Mountain and the West Virginia Mine Wars? I have heard of it. I'm probably going to make a video about it in the not too distant future. It's on my list of things to make videos about. I decided, for some reason, I decided to make a lot of videos about leftism in America and about anarchists and stuff like that. Like, I'm retreating into a time when the left had a little bit more hope, you know, like about 100 and something years ago. So, like, in September, I'm making a video about Emma Goldman. And yeah, I don't even know what I'm making in October. In October, I might be talking about Marcus Garvey, actually. I think he's a good gateway to the left. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm sure that for someone who's just getting into leftist politics, that Steve Shives' content is really good for that. I became a leftist when I was 13, so I've been a leftist since like 2001, 2002. So like I have a fairly long history of leftist stuff. So I'm sure, like, what's it called? I'm sure stuff. You were doing a great job. I'm doing a great job repping the family. Well, thank you, Peter. Much appreciated. I'll see you at the reunion. Yeah. So the left, I'm sure that Steve Shives fills a political niche for a lot of people. Like I said, I actually like Steve Shives. Seems like a really nice guy. His content seems like, for the audience that it's for, is really good. Just not my thing. I'm sure that's fine. I'm sure he would think my stuff is not his stuff either. And yeah, very good for getting people kind of center of the road more onto the left, which is, admirable endeavor. So all good for that. Just yeah, I've been like a leftist since I was like a teenager, so there you go. Like what's it called? I remember being, I don't exactly know when I like got like, bread pilled or whatever, but I do know that I became an anarchist because of Noam Chomsky in 2009 when I was 21. And I know that I was already far on the left for, I was already on the far left by the time I got to, what's it called? By the time the Iraq War started back in 2003. So I remember getting very mad about the Iraq War. And so, yeah, that was my start, was reading books like Rogue Nation, The History of America that the rest of the world knows, or something like that. That was the book that really, I think that's the book that radicalized me on the left. It's probably a kind of an old hat book now, but let me find the name of the book, because I it's like Rogue Nation. Rogue Nation. Can't find it because now there's a Mission Impossible called Rogue Nation. But there was a book called Rogue Nation, and it was like an introduction to the America that the rest of the world knows. And it was a book that I was recommended by a teacher of mine when I was in like grade 9 or grade 10. And basically that book turned me into a leftist. And then also around the same time, around 2002, is when I saw Bowling for Columbine. And Bowling for Columbine got me really into leftist politics. And I read a bunch of Michael Moore's books, and that got me more into like left-wing politics. And that sort of all got sort of spilt out from there. Yeah. Section 98 was damaging to the left in Canada. It basically gave the government the right to arrest any socialist, communist, or trade unionist at their leisure. Sounds about right. If Neanderthals had survived, we would have just had sex with them until there was no clear line between us. Because that's what happened last time, too. Does he look at YouTube chat? Oh, I do. I do look at YouTube chat. So, whoever was here almost an hour ago, I hope you're still around, Dougie. This is like, I'm more behind than I usually am on Tuesday nights. This is actually kind of stressing me out. There's so many of you here. There's 59 people in the chat, and you guys are all being very active. So, it's a good problem to have. Yeah, Austin. It wouldn't be bad. I wouldn't want to live in the U.S., but if I did, Austin might be a good place. Canada has racism? No way. Oh, yeah. What is Biden's polling with Republicans? I don't remember. I think there's like a thing. Somebody. I saw a poll a little bit earlier, but I don't know where he's polling with Republicans at the moment. I think he was like 9% or something like that. Let's see. I went to engineering school, destroyed myself. Ah, Laura. You're a champ. Yeah, engineering school sounds like the absolute worst. I almost funny thing, I almost went to university for biology. When I dropped out of audio engineering school, the first thing I wanted to do was go into evolutionary biology. But what I would need to do to go to university is I needed to upgrade a bunch of my math marks and my science and take a bunch of science credits that I didn't have from high school. So I was doing this like self-directed learning thing for biology, for like grade 11 biology. And I decided that actually if I just went into like the arts and humanities or something, like I think at one point I was like, I'll become like a English teacher or something. Then I went to a program that I did have the grades to get into. And then during that program, I became convinced that I was going to apply to university for sociology and that I was going to become a sociologist. And when I went to apply to undergrad, when I went to apply to start my to start university, I was listening to hardcore history. And something during that Christmas break when I was applying to universities, I just kind of came to the conclusion that was like, if I really want to think about it, like history's kind of been a thing that I've always been attracted to my whole life, but I just never thought it was a thing that I could like go to university and major in. And so I decided to do history. Like kind of at the last second, like while I had the application open with like sociology on the desired major, I made the very fateful decision to choose history instead. Which is bananas given how the rest of my life's trajectory has gone based on that one decision. It kind of impulsively made because I just happened to be listening to a history podcast and vibing pretty hard with it at the time, and it kind of all clicked together. I met a guy with a Canadian grandma and insisted that he was Canadian to everybody in Germany. He thought I was making things up when I said something about Canada Day. Oh boy. Yeah, Americans do pretend to be Canadians abroad. I do remember this. What's an MA of engineering? Sorry, yeah, MSc. I think MSc or something like that. How long is the stream going on from? We started at 7 and it's 9:38, so I'm going to be going for another 22 minutes. Vosh does some entertaining non-debate content, IMO. I can see why some people don't like him, though. Wait, you're claiming that Biden is doing worse than Hillary was at this point in 2016? I think so. The polls, maybe I have to like look more in depth at like the poll of polls, but that's the last thing I saw showed that yeah, he was kind of behind where he was at this point in the election for Hillary in 2016. First time I saw a Vosh stream, he was going on a long rant about why he never apologized even in his personal life. I noped out of there. Yeah, it's not a sign of somebody that you want to be friends with, for sure. Bill Nye versus Ken Ham was the only time I was ever tempted to watch when I was in my edgy atheist phase. Oh, yeah, I heard that he did that. I never saw it. It's a lot of people yelling over each other and interrupting, and I've never learned anything new, and the only thing that has changed is my opinion of the debaters themselves. Sounds about right. Maybe I should have a debate with somebody that's like, you know, like it has a topic. I'm surprised by how many debates that happen on Twitch don't have topics. They're just these two people are going to debate. Like it's the fucking like that's what makes me think it has this like WWE undertone. And then even then, you don't have it doesn't seem to result in any sort of actual grown-up conversation about any ideas. It's mostly, I don't know, I always find that a lot of debates, they just end up fighting over semantics, you know? They're just like, oh, like, I have my definition of this word is this, and the other person's like, well, my definition of the word is this. And then they basically hit an impasse for the rest of the debate. The only good debate was Tristan Thoughts Live in the Surfs commentating over the Canadian leadership debates. That was a pretty fun. I remember that night. That was pretty fun. What is the poll of polls? It's like a kind of like what's going on 538, like a collection of multiple polls, or like kind of like what Real Clear Politics is doing with like a rolling average and stuff. Sort of like even out all the different results with different end numbers and stuff. Xander Halls or what's it called? Debates bros are a bunch of drama llamas. Yeah. I thought Xander Hall like ran a sex cult or something. Yeah. Okay. Just sifting through the things here. I don't want to have states at all. I mean, that's also a good answer. You wouldn't have to, yeah, decolonization wouldn't be an issue if there were no states, that's for sure. Too much cat hair on the microphone. So much cat hair. Yeah, Phoebe likes to like butt her head on this thing, so yeah, there's going to be cat hair on it. You said a lot of tankies are radicalized in response to American imperialism. Is that the same reason so many of them like Tulsi Gabbard? Yeah, there's sort of like a strain of the left that is under the impression that being anti-American in any context or being anti-imperialism, no matter what other things you do, is good, is unified good, and that we should support anybody who's against American imperialism. Which, like, honestly, if I was a teenager, I'd probably be more like when I was a teenager and just getting into leftist politics is something that I would have been inspired or more influenced by. But I'm less influenced by as an older person, just because, like, you know, you can be against American imperialism and still drop barrel bombs on your own people. Africa is polio free as wild polio is now gone on the continent. Damn, that's so good. The role play scenario of the 2020 election, how come it didn't take into account Trump or Biden's mental decline? I don't know. Mostly it was trying to figure, because I think that mostly in those simulations they were trying to find out what would happen if different, like how different institutions would interact with each other given different election results. So it didn't have a whole lot to do with, like, a lot of the stuff that happened had to do with Trump's campaign and Biden's campaign. And so you can kind of like smooth out their cognitive decline based on the fact that it's going to be like an organization, what an organization does. Alrighty. Making progress, but we're getting very close to the end of the stream. Now I'm like, oh shit, can I get caught up by the time the stream ends? Oh boy. It's been a rough... I've been very bad at answering questions tonight, it seems. People forget that during the Eisenhower administration, the top marginal tax rate was 91%. Yeah. Humans are naturally anarchists, but agriculture and settling down. But even in the agricultural period, half of it was limited hierarchy. Yeah, you could even argue that like feudalism was like not really a state. It was very like loose and very like you don't see like the formal organization of governments and states until like the early modern period. Okay. All anarchist spaceship knows is how to eat hot chips, scan nebula, and vibe. I like it. I just want to vibe and like, you know, analyze dark matter nebulas. That's all I want to do. I asked like 5 streams ago your thought on the FLQ, and you said you were going to talk about that another time. I haven't seen the last stream. Did you go and talk about it? Well, what I mean is, when I say I want to talk about another time, is that I kind of want to make a video on the October crisis at some point. What I kind of mean is that, like, yeah, the October crisis is relatively high on my list of videos I want to make someday. So my guess is that because I'd have to do the research and stuff, so I don't have a lot of research to draw from to talk about the FLQ right now. All I know is that, yeah, they were Quebec nationalists who kidnapped 2 politicians, killed one, and in exchange for returning one of the hostages, they got to go to Cuba. They went to Cuba. But I think that there's some complications. Like, I think that, like, one half of the, like, there's one faction of the FLQ that was, like, for, there was like one side of the FLQ that was for things like that took one guy, and then there was another faction that took another guy, and that they might have not like agreed with each other and stuff like that. So and that like the one who got killed might have been an accident and stuff like that. So I'd have to figure it out. I'll have to see what's up. Gotta go to bed. Good night and keep up the good fight. See you at the reunion. Take care, Peter. Nice meeting you. Yeah, Cristo Ivalis. I like his work. He's way smarter than I am. That's for sure. I gotta get him on a thing at some point. I'm sure he would be right on. He'd be on board. Is this the one? Yes. Yeah, that's the book I read. So I must have read it in 2003. Okay. So I was against the Iraq War before it started. So I know that, like, maybe that book didn't turn me to the left. Maybe something else did. I know we did a mock election like in 8th grade where I repped for the NDP. So I guess. So the thing is that this is like years and years ago now, okay? So I don't actually have all that many memories of when I turned into a leftist, because it was it was 18 years ago now. And so I'm like, I'm struggling to remember what Tristan, when he was like 13, what got him into leftist stuff. But I think that I thought it was basically like 9/11 and the war on terror stuff. I do remember there being a talk when I was in grade 9, that was saying that like more like by like November or something, or like December or January of 2003 or whatever. By January 2003, more people had died in the war in Afghanistan than had died on 9/11. And at that point I was like, well, this is bad. Why are we doing this? And that sort of, I guess it all went from there. So yes, Delru found the book. So let me give a link so that everybody else can get their hands on it. So this is the book that I read that definitely radicalized me anyway. I realize I'm catching up very fast. People are still talking family history. My Polish grandmother's family, the Zamoskis, are related to Mary Curie and the current Polish royalty. Well, there you go. The other wing, so I got one wing in my family that are Bilodeaus that are all related to French Canadians, to Jacques Bilodeau, who arrived in the 17th century. The other half of my family, or the other part of my family, came to Newfoundland. They're from Newfoundland. They came to Newfoundland from Wales, and they lived in Newfoundland from the 1700s or whatever until about probably the 20th century, when my family and stuff left home and stuff, or left to go to BC and stuff. So that's my... What were you before a socialist? I mean, I was... the thing about me is that socialism, I think, was the first political ideology that I ever went towards, because I was 12, 13 or whatever. So, before that, you don't really think too much about politics. And the first time I thought about politics, it came from a pretty left-wing direction, I think. My left-wing journey began at 14, wanting to legalize weed. Not bad. The recent CBS poll shows that 5% of Republicans are voting for Biden. Oof. The RNC night, TLDR, socialism will destroy America. Oh boy. It's interesting that the RNC, the Republicans get to have 2 conventions, while the Democrats didn't have any. It's a very strange night. My 2 highest marks in high school were ancient history and biology, but I did biology. My highest uni marks were philosophy, astronomy, and behavioral ecology. Cool. When I did my undergrad, I actually, because of some weird shit that had to do with a kind of intermediary program I took between high school and university, I actually didn't have to do any classes except for my major. So I took only history classes while I was an undergrad, except for a handful that I took for fun. In my first year, I took Spanish. And in my last year, I didn't have that many history credits, but I wanted to stay a full-time student, so I took feminist literary theory, which was probably the hardest class I took at all university. It was such a hard class. There's so much reading involved. And then I took, but I learned so much from feminist literary theory. I still talk about shit I learned in that class today. And I also took American politics and Middle Eastern politics. And I remembered in American politics, that was my last year at university. It was my last year of my undergrad, and it was in the fall semester, and it was fall of 2012, because the election between Barack Obama and Mitt Romney was happening, and so we talked a lot about the upcoming presidential election in the class. And then the next semester, I took Middle Eastern politics, which was pretty enlightening as well, and pretty interesting. There's most stuff around the 2016 election that radicalized me. I was probably most aligned with the Democratic Party until I saw Bernie's ideas and how extreme they were seen. Yeah, I feel like my wife was always very left of center, especially on social stuff. For most of the time we've been together. But I think that she actually became radicalized into socialism, and actually was what the fuck's going on with the Democratic Party when what's it called? When the 2020 primaries were happening, and she saw in real time the kind of shit that was driving me insane in the 2016 primaries that she didn't quite get at the time. And now she's like, holy shit, this is infuriating. And that kind of got to the place where we are now. Do you have advice for knowing which books to choose when you want to dive deep into a particular historical era? E.g., I want to get into Soviet history, but I don't know what books to start with. Typically, I mean, a good place to start is the Wikipedia page. The Wikipedia page for, especially for like a big historical topic, for example, like the Soviet Union, there is definitely like a huge amount of people who are very invested in Sovietology who are managing the Wikipedia page for the Soviet Union. And so what they're definitely going to put a lot of work into making sure that as per the to keep a Wikipedia page of a certain high quality of research or a certain high quality of article, they need to keep the sources pretty neutral and up to date. And so what you can find is that the references section of a high quality Wikipedia page can give you a lot of like the major books that you should check out in that area, and then see who they're responding to and sort of work from there. If that's what it means, the poll of polls on 538 have Biden surging. Wow. Surging's a bit extreme, but he still does look like he's in a pretty good spot. A lot of the what's it called? Looks like most likely like 324 electoral college votes. We'll see what happens. We'll see. There's still a lot of election to go. There's a lot of people who aren't even thinking about the election yet, and they won't be until fairly soon, or until a little bit from now. Okay. Isn't Xander the one who says that trans people shouldn't speak on trans issues? I don't know. They all say the same people to me. I'm surprised the scenario simulation doesn't have its own D&D campaign. Oh, it should. I couldn't find it, but I would really love to see a report from this simulation that talked about the rules of the game more and the mechanics they used. That would make me more. I would be really interested to see how that turned out. Do you like literature or cinema more? Probably literature. I actually don't watch that many movies, but I read a lot of books. Like, I've read, I think, about 20 books this year, and I've probably seen, like, I don't even know, probably, like, less than 10 movies for sure. "2020 is a bad year for that, but in general, I don't really watch that many movies, but I read a lot of books. Just, I don't know, like, Kelly doesn't really like movies that much. We more watch TV, and you know, I just don't ever feel a strong desire to watch movies, to be honest. What do you think of Lao Y86? I don't know who that is. My left-wing journey began in response to Trump getting elected. That was a real shock to my worldview. Yeah, that'll do it. There's a lot of people who their sort of introduction into how shitty everything was began with the election. That's kind of Thoughtslime story too. His like thing that like really set him off was the 2016 election, and he's older than me, so like, yeah, people come into politics at different times of their lives. I checked 538's article, seeing why it seems so similar to 2016. Basically, they're factoring the possibility of Biden having a massive turndown between now and November. If that doesn't happen, his final simulation will likely be better than Hillary's final sim. All right. 20 fiction or nonfiction books. It's a mix. Political ecology is the study of behavior in which the lens of evolution. Oh boy, that sounds messed up. 20 mix of fiction and nonfiction books. I can probably tell you all of the books. Let me go to Goodreads and tell you all of the books I read in 2020. My goal is to read 28 before the end of the year. So this year, what has Tristan read? I guess I'll start with the beginning of the year. So, Mindhunter, which is a book about forensic psychology. Because Internet, Understanding the New Rules of Language by Gretchen McCullough, which is a book about internet linguistics and stuff. John Truby's The Anatomy of Story, which is, you know, a book about the anatomy of story. The Conquest of Bread. The Power of Habit. It's a book about habits. I didn't like it very much. Layering Your Novel, which is about. I read a bunch of books on writing and storytelling, so that because I was trying to get better at writing scripts. Triggers, which is like a kind of like self-improvement book. History versus Women, which was a profile of various women in history written by Anita Sarkeesian. That was pretty good. Thinking in Bets, which is like a book about kind of managing uncertainty. The Kobold Guide to Game Design, which is a game design book I read for some reason. Bird by Bird, which is a memoir on writing. An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green, so it's a science fiction novel. On Writing by Stephen King, so it's another writing memoir. Dungeon World, so it's the book for an RPG, kind of D&D like RPG. 10 Candles, which is another RPG book that I read. Zweihander, another RPG book that I read. The Cold War by Otto and Westad, which is sort of like a generic overall Cold War summary by Otto and Westad. Stamped from the Beginning by Ibram X. Kendi, which is a pretty good book. It's a book that was sent to me by a patron or a fan. A fan sent me this book in the mail, and I had to read it. It looked and it ended up being really good and really useful in our year. The Case Against Free Speech, the First Amendment, Fascism, and the Future of Dissent. That was the book I was talking about earlier with you guys about like free speech on campus and sort of breaking it down. And then I read the most recent book that I finished was Ursula K. Le Guin's The Dispossessed, which is like a science fiction novel about anarchism and stuff. Yeah. So that's everything I read this year. And then I realized that it is 10 o'clock. So let's go and find someone cool to hang out with. And for everybody else, or what I was saying is I'll be back on, what's it called? Let's go see Olive. Olive is a YouTuber, is a kind of Twitter personality, and she's a pretty good leftist, and she's playing Bloodborne. So let's go see Olive. But I'll be back on Monday for everybody else, and expect some new content. And I'm gonna go and sleep a lot. Hope everybody had a good stream, and take care of yourselves and each other. Make love, not war.